Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. I hope you all had a great week, and I hope you're ready for a little bit more photography fun. Anyway, it's Tuesday, it's 6 p.m., and I am back with more photography reviews. We have a nice mix of some pet photography, landscape photography, macro photography, and also wildlife. So I'm sure it's going to be lots of fun and I hope you going to enjoy it. Anyway, for all of you who's joining us live on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, and also on our Clever Photography or Clever Photographer Facebook group, thank you very much for joining us. If you have a moment, make sure that you join us in the comments and make sure that you let us know where you're watching from and just come over and say hi. For those of you who are watching in replay, thank you for doing that. I hope you're going to have a fun too. Anyway, let me just quickly go through it looking at our comments. Hello to Tony, greetings to SX2. I hope you had a great day. Greetings to Zdeněk all the way in South Africa. Zdeněk, thank you very much for joining us. And again, greetings to all of you. We're going to quickly get through the beginning. First of all, if you want to join us for the photography review show, all you need to do is to jump to our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership. There you can join our Clever Photographer Plus membership, which give you access to photography review show. You can send your image over. Then it also gives you access to our Clever Photographer Academy. And finally, it will give you a monthly bundle of photography digital tools, which are always themed in a certain photography style. So, for example, just now in November, we were doing wildlife photography style. In December, we're going to be covering festive and holiday photography. And it always is lots of fun. This bundle includes generally between 200 to 300 different assets, and the assets include Luminar Neo and Lightroom presets, overlays, textures, custom brushes, and backgrounds, and so much more. So if you want to find out more about it, head to our website, cleverphotography.com/forward membership. So this is how to join us. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to take your photos, we're going to look at them, and in general, we look at three parts of the photo. We look at the technical part. This is where we look at your camera settings. We look at things like exposure, noise, sharpness, light, and things like that. After that, we look at the artistic part of the image. We look at things like composition, main subject, storytelling, and everything to do with the actual story of the photo. And finally, if we have a time, we look at the photo editing. I try to give you some tips and tricks on what I would do differently. And I'll do all of that in Luminar Neo, following the fact that our YouTube channel is all about Luminar Neo. However, most of the editing I do can be done in any other similar photo editing application like Lightroom on one and so on. So now you know how to join us with your photos, maybe already next week. You know what we're going to do, so we can move on and start looking at your photos. But first come first, also greeting to Steven. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you're going to enjoy the show. Again, hello to Zdeněk, hello to Tony. Folks, if you're ready, let's jump to it and start right away. So let me make sure that you can see my screen properly right here. Now you can see the images and we can start. So starting with pictures from Elizabeth, who this week sent us this lovely sunset with the road and also this animal right here. Now for the actual animal, I believe that I have a little note or story to what we're looking at. So let me just get this to make sure. So the note from Elizabeth was that this animal is called capybara. Now capybara is a giant cavy rodent native to South America, and it's the largest living rodent. So I wonder how big is this, but it's quite impressive, definitely, with a beautiful sunshine coming from the side. So actually, let's start right from there. Let me just make sure that everyone can see. Now I can see that we are not broadcasting to Facebook page and Facebook group, but that's fine. I will upload the video there a little later. So if you want to join us, we are live on YouTube, and I will definitely be happy to see you there. So starting with, again, capybara right here. Let's have a look at the camera details. This was captured with Canon RP with the lens Tamron 28 to 300 millimeters. Now, looking at the camera settings for this image, ISO 320, 300 millimeters, f6.3, and 1/500 of a second. Now, from the camera settings, ISO 320, generally for wildlife photography, is quite acceptable, knowing obviously that the lower the ISO, the better for us, as we really don't want to introduce any additional noise to the images. But again, 320, no problem here. 300 millimeters on the lens, so really zoomed in, probably from quite far, with the limitation probably on the 300 millimeters of f6.3, which is perfectly fine. It does give us a little bit of a soft background, which I think works quite well. The sharpness pretty much on the face and the foreground is there, so that's a good choice there. And 1/500 of a second on the shutter speed is great. I'm assuming that the animal wasn't really moving that fast, so you could probably go somewhere around 1/350th. But looking at the settings, 1/500 of a second is perfectly fine, and it definitely works for this image. Now, looking at the image in overall, again, as I mentioned, the foreground and the face look all sharp, all good there for me. The highlights and the overall exposure is well done too. Obviously, it's a scene with maybe a little stronger shadows, but the fact that the light actually comes on the face is quite nice, and I think it worked quite well. Now, when I zoom in, the noise, there's not really much noise there. There's maybe a little bit in the darker areas, but nothing crazy. Again, the sharpness is very decent. So technically, I think it's quite lovely picture and it's well captured. Now, talking about composition, it's quite interesting. I quite like the fact that you zoom in on the face. You get the face in the middle of the image, so it's the kind of central point of view. Definitely, the message is clear. The focal point is right there. Anybody who look at the image know immediately what you're trying to show. I also enjoy the mix of the colors. I think the warm leaves and the warm colors on the image in the combination with the light works really nicely. So maybe if I could add to it and have a maybe wish, if you would want to improve the image, I wish there was a little bit more of the animal on the side here. I'm not a huge fan of cropping. I like crop, but when it's really intentionally cropped, but that's just a wish. I understand sometimes when we're capturing this animals, it's not always easy to do. So that's about it. Other than that, I think it's all nicely done. I really like the natural vignette, which helps to, again, bring more focus on the center of the image and on the main subject. And I think overall, it's really nicely done. So Elizabeth, well done on that image. Very well captured. And thank you very much for sharing it with us. Coming back to the first image, which is this dramatic and epic sunset over the road and a landscape right here. Now, this was captured actually with mobile phone, and it looks like Samsung Galaxy S22. From the camera settings, I mean, I can mention them, but to be honest, it's not really the most important part of the image. As with the mobile phones, the camera settings are a little bit different than on your regular DSLR or mirrorless cameras. Still, ISO 40, 6.4 millimeters on the lens, and f1.8 and 1/120th of a second. Now, this image, to be honest, is much more about what's happening on it than the actual technical part. Because once you start to zoom in, generally with mobile phones on this low light situation, you can start to see the pixelation and noise and lots of kind of mistakes which comes specifically for this really high definition image and with this really big color range. But I think in overall, when you look at it, it definitely brings lots of emotion. It's a beautiful capture with lots of beautiful colors. I really enjoy the sky. And I think as a composition with that kind of 1/3 of the ground, giving us the base for the sky, and then 2/3 of the sky there on an image where pretty much the sky is the main subject of the image. I think it works very well. So technically, fine. It's very, very good. For a mobile phone, very impressive. Uh, Composition wise, also very nicely done, and I really enjoy the road there. Now again, the fact that it was captured with the super wide lens gives us this kind of distortion where the landscape looks really kind of pushed down, and it's not very dominant, but I think as in overall it's actually really nice. What I would do, I would probably crop it even a little bit tighter. So here, what I would do, I would just bring it down a little bit so we can use simple free cropping. And what we could do is just maybe bring it a little bit lower, so that way we get more of the ground into the image. And when I do that, basically what happens is we have a really nice clean proportion between the foreground, which is the kind of landscape, then we have the sky, and it just works all together. So there is actually a handful of really nice composition tricks here. So the leading lines and flow created by the road usually works really well. I also really enjoyed the balance of the image, when you can almost imagine that you would put a tip of a scale in the middle. You can see how it's really nicely balanced together. Again, the rule of thirds here used as 2/3 of the sky and 1/3 of the ground works really, really well here. So there's lots of stuff done really nicely here, and I really enjoy the image. So Elizabeth, well done. Congratulations on this image. It's very pretty, as well as the first one. I never seen this animal before, and it's quite exciting to see it on an image like this. Lots of things done right on this image as well. So again, well done, and congratulations. So, Elizabeth, I'm looking forward to seeing more images from you next week. And before that, we're going to move to another photographer. Tony, what am I seeing here? Cow running towards me. Let's have a look at your images. So, Tony, again, from Essex, our regular photographer on our show. Always enjoy seeing his pictures. He has some incredible captures in macro photography world, but I'm really happy to see that you're trying different things and challenging yourself, because I think that's definitely a way to go. So let's have a look at it. We have a cow here running towards you with some foreground here a little bit, giving us a little bit of depth. So that's one. Then we have this landscape picture here. I wonder what we're looking at, if it's going to tell us. No, but Tony, if you have a moment, let us know in the comments what we looking at right here. But it's a very pretty cityscape. Then we have this capture with the water in the foreground, some very pretty garden here with lots of lovely colors. And finally, another seascape right here with a very kind of moody feel, including the windmills and combination of all of that. So what are we going to look at? Let's start talking about this one, which is very lovely attempt for, again, moody cityscape with kind of classic view, very kind of old British or English architecture mixed with the foliage in the foreground. So let's start by looking at the camera settings. We are with Canon 50D, lens 18 to 135 millimeters. And from the camera settings, ISO 400, 135 millimeters on the lens, f6.7, and 1/250th of a second. So from the camera settings, Tony, with the landscape photography, especially this one, you always really want to go as much as you can towards the ISO 100. Especially when I understand it was probably lower light situation here, and the lens maybe didn't let you go much lower on the f-stop, but really the goal is 100 ISO. But 400 is still generally quite okay, and with most of the current noise reduction system, you are able to remove it. But that's just a kind of goal there. 135 millimeters, giving you this lovely zoom, so that's all good. f6.7, perfectly fine. Generally, it gives you quite nice depth, and with focus on the city, it will give you sharpness all the way through. 1/250th of a second. I mean, looking at the image, the exposure and everything looks good there, so well done on that. Now, let's just zoom in more towards the town. Looking at it, it does have a very good sharpness, as you can see. There is a little bit of noise on it, but it's not really crazy, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. And in overall, the light is nice. Again, adding quite nice mood feeling to this picture. And looking over my shoulder at the place, Tony mentioned in the comments that what we're looking at is actually Edinburgh. So, Tony, that is a lovely capture from here. Now, when we move to the composition, I will say a few things. I'm a big fan of using the foreground elements like the trees and blurring them out because I think that really adds depth. But as foreground elements here, I think it's a little bit distracting that it's taking or covering the actual main subject. I think it takes lots of attention away and it really distracts the view. So what I would have hope is that pretty much major part of the city is covered, or it's not covered with the trees basically. So that would be really my hope there. I don't necessarily mind about this part, but here it's a lot of it, and I think it takes lots of attention away from the city. So that would be my suggestion for that next time, to try to maybe find different view. Sometimes you really have to play around with it, position yourself and try it differently. However, as an attempt, I think it's great. So first, these trees are a great way to add depth. And second, if you really position yourself right, it can create a really nice frame around, which is called frame in frame composition, and it can really help to the overall view. So well done on trying. Just, I think it's a little bit of too much of it, covering bit too much of the city that in general you're trying to show. So that's more for that. Editing wise, it's a nice, lovely edit with, again, that kind of moody feel with the sky and everything. I think it works very well. But talking about the foreground, I would just look for a little bit different view. Now, let's have a look at another image since we here. Let's see. This garden here, also very, very pretty. That's a lovely view, nicely captured together, nicely put together. Again, with Canon 50D, this one with 18 to 135 millimeters lens, ISO on 400, 35 millimeters, f8, 1/20th of a second. So ISO, again, 400 here. Let's have a look if we zoom in. You can see a little bit of a noise, but nothing crazy. It may be more pixelation from the JPEG. Also, it's kind of smaller when it comes to pixel, but it's not that crazy. It's more visible on the area here when you look at it. When you zoom in a little bit, it starts to be pixelated, but in overall, the sharpness is quite pleasing. The f8, again, give you really nice sharpness all the way through. However, generally, when you're using wider view, like the 35 millimeters, you can go even lower and you will get the sharpness all across. 1/20th of a second works quite well. As I can see, it's a diffuse light, so that all works really well, and I think it's nicely done. Now, talking about the composition itself, this is a great example on anytime I go with photographers to capture city and then we look at the result. It's impressive how often human eyes are attracted by the bright red color. So talking about bright red cars, people in red jackets, they really stand out from the image. And even though I look at the image and it has a lovely autumn colors and all of that, this piece of probably like a barrier with red color, and also the lady or somebody walking away in a red jacket, really immediately attract my attention. It's just something to do with the red color, which works like this. It's a combination of contrast on the image, where often human eyes get attracted to the brighter parts or the whitest part of the image. In this case, when it comes to saturation, you have all these lovely earthy natural colors in autumn, and then this red really stand out as a contrast to the rest of the image. So that's just one thing there. Otherwise, I think it's really nicely done. I really enjoy it. I enjoy the water in foreground with a little bit of reflection. It has a lovely depth to it, lovely feel. I really enjoy the fact that there is nothing distracting the view except the red barrier. I think it's all really nicely put together, nice natural feel, and I think it all works really well. So lovely, lovely capture. My only point would be for this, and maybe you could try to remove it using any tools here in Luminar Neo or anywhere else, because I think this could be quite easily done, and I think it could just help the image in overall a little bit more. Final thing, looking at it, I think for my eyes, it's a little bit over saturated, so it's a little bit on the stronger side. but it's super easy to adjust. You would just jump into edit module here in Luminar Neo, and we can use multiple different tools. So we, for example, gonna use the color tool. And the way to adjust saturation in general, what I would do, I would bring it all the way down, the saturation slider. And what I do then, I basically click on the saturation slider, and I don't look at the slider and the number on it. I look at the image itself. And then with my mouse, I start to increase the saturation up. And I increase it as far as I think it was. So I look at the image, and when I'm happy with it, so let's say somewhere around here, I let go. And then only I look at the slider, and I can see that the saturation right there is on -90. So sometimes when we look at the image for too long, it almost gets burned out in our eyes. So we get used to it. And to liven it up a little bit, we keep pushing things like contrast and saturation and maybe sometimes sharpness as well, mixed with clarity, even though it doesn't need it anymore. What you would really need is to take a break for an hour or for a day or for a week, and then come back, and you would see that you would adjust these things back again. So maybe I would add a little bit more, maybe somewhere around -15, but I think that that would be more than enough. So again, the tip is you bring the saturation slider down, you don't look at the slider, you look at the image, and you start to increase the slider up. And when you're happy with it, you just let go, and then you look at the saturation. And generally, in my case anyway, and in many cases of my students, they let go earlier than they did originally. So now when I look at the before and after, you can see how it makes a subtle difference, but in overall, I think it helps. If you would want to add a little bit of extra saturation, in this case, instead of bringing the saturation slider back, I would push a little bit the vibrance slider. So somewhere around here. Okay, so that's this image. Let's jump quickly back to the catalog, and let's just very briefly talk about this image right here, which I think is really nicely done. Lots of good stuff on it. I enjoy the proportion of the sky with the ground. I enjoy the birds on it. I really like the framing with the foreground, middle ground, and background, so that all works really well. Looking at the camera settings, ISO 200, spot on there, f11, again, on this image, I think f11 is right. First, you're not as wide on your lens anymore, so you're on 62 millimeters. Second, you have a kind of quite big foreground close to the camera, so you want to make sure that you use higher f-stop, so you have a sharpness all the way from here to the end of the image. So lots of things done here very well. I love the crop. I like the 9:16. I think it works really well too. The straight horizon, lots of right things on it. Well done. I'm really happy with that image. And now with your cow, what would I tell you for that? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Now, again, Canon 50D, 28 to 105 millimeters, higher ISO here for the wildlife, great capture, 83 millimeters. Now, looking at it, the sharpness isn't great. You can get slight softness on it, and that's maybe to do with the 1/160th of a second. I generally, when I photograph lots of Highland cows in Scotland, I would stay around 350th or about 260th, just to make sure that they are really sharp. But other than that, it's good fun. Thank you for sharing it with us, and thank you for sending it over. So, Tony, 4 pictures. Well done on the attempt. Well done on visiting Edinburgh. I love the city. Lots of amazing pictures can be captured there. So, well done for capturing this one. And again, thank you for sharing it with us. So, moving forward to Zdeněk. So, let's take a trip to South Africa, where we're going to look at 2 captures here. So, starting with this one, this is kudu. Kudu. Now, looking at the image, first thing I would say right away, Zdeněk, is that you look at it, and this is a great example of the contrast rule in composition. You look at it, and even though the animal is there, your eyes get immediately attracted by the brighter part on the top. Crazy. It's just the eyes. It's nothing to do with anything wrong with the image. It's just that as the background is more saturated and brighter, I didn't even look it down. I look at the top of the image, already the area right here. So that's just how it is. It's crazy. So what it tells us is that we would need to do few adjustments to bring more attention to the main subject. And we'll do that later. First, let's talk about the camera settings. We are on Canon 77D with the lens, again, Canon 55 to 250 millimeters. From the camera settings for this image, ISO 140, 109 millimeters on the lens, f6.3 and 1/200 of a second. From the camera settings, ISO 400, wildlife, not a problem there. 109 millimeters, so not crazy zoom. I wonder how far you were from the animal. F6.3, perfectly fine. With 109 millimeters, it will give you nice depth anyway, and it really helps as you have a sharpness on the entire animal and a lovely graduate softness coming to the background. 1/220th, 1/220, no, 1/200 of a second. Oh my god, I won't be able to say it. 1/200 of a second on the shutter speed is perfectly fine as well. As you can see that the sharpness is really lovely. With lots of details and again with quite nice light on it. So since we're talking about the image and we talk about the contrast and composition, let's try to see if we can do something with it. So first we need to darken our background a little bit. Now we could try to use Relight AI here in Luminar Neo. Basically, you can adjust the brightness of a near, whatever is close to the camera, and brightness to the far. So let's try to adjust the brightness far. What it does, it then scans the image and basically darken the background. So let's have a look. I need to adjust it a little bit, somewhere around here. That's a little bit better. Then we can add a little bit of brightness to the front, but maybe what we're gonna do, we actually gonna do this, and then we're gonna use a little bit of masking with not so much strength, a little bit bigger brush, and we actually going to brush over the animal. So that way we're gonna be getting some brightness on it. Now there you go. So basically we only darkening the background. So that is better. Now, at the same time, what we could do, we could also make the background a little less saturated. So for this, again, we're going to simply bring down the saturation, not to black and white, but maybe somewhere around -30. And again, we're going to erase this unsaturation over our animal. So just like this right here. Now, I'm doing it quite fast. I don't want to take too much time, but I'm sure you're getting the idea. In overall, when I look at the animal itself, I can also see that it has a little bit of a blue fade on it. So what we could do, we could simply adjust a little bit of the white balance. So we would add a little bit of warmth and a little bit of magenta. And again, we only gonna add it to our main subject. So let's see if that will help. That will definitely help us. And now it's time to brighten him up a little bit. So for this, again, develop tool, a little bit of extra exposure, maybe open the shadows just a little bit. And we're gonna, again, use a brush and mask it just on the animal. So let's have a look, somewhere around here and also maybe here. So that's much better. Maybe here and on the ears too. Now let's have a look before and after, and it's already starting to look much better. So maybe a little bit right here, and that's much better too. A little bit of mystical tool with softness and glow, but not crazy. And then a little bit of matte with extra super contrast. So let's have a look. And I think that's much better. Finally, vignette with center on the head. So somewhere here with extra inner light in the center. And there you have it. So this is what I would do. Let me see how you see it on the screen, if that will help. And let's have a look at the before and after. So, okay, so we have the main subject, which is not really standing out from the image. What are the steps we can do to separate it from the background? Now, and this is where we work again with the contrast composition technique. So first we can start by knowing that human eyes get automatically attracted by brighter parts of the image, meaning that we can make the main subject brighter and everything else darker. Another technique to adjust the brightness is to use vignette, which we have applied to everywhere except the main subject, which again was the animal. Another way to work with the contrast is to work with colors or saturation. So more saturation, more attention. So we have made our main subject more saturated and we have removed saturation from everywhere else. The third rule on how you could use contrast and into your advance would be sharpness, but in this case we have a lots of depth there anyway. But what you would do, you would make your main subject a little bit sharper and you would unsharpen or make softer everything else. So in combination, and this is a quick edit, so don't worry about the masking, don't worry. It's just to show you the idea. But in overall, we have started here where the main attraction was the background with the sky. And we have ended here where when I would look at this image, I would get much more attracted by the main subject. So Zdeněk, great capture, beautiful animal. Love lots about it. I really like the framing and all of that, with just a little bit of help there. So now it's time to move at your second image, which is amazing. So I'm happy that I have spent lots of time with the first picture because I will not have much to add here. That's a beautiful panorama with lots of amazing things together, lovely light with a little bit of shadows, great sky, lots of texture, beautiful leading line, getting you through the image. Zdeněk actually is mentioning that let me show you. This is a panorama of 6 pictures put together. And Zdeněk, it's well done, beautiful thing again with a lovely view. And I always kind of judge these images based on if it would be ready to be shared or printed and put on the wall. And this is totally an image that would be, it's ready, you just print it, put it in a frame and have it in your hallway or living room. I think it would be beautiful. So starting from the top, again, it is a 6 picture panorama, but from the camera settings or camera, at least from what we're getting, this is captured with Canon 77D, with the Canon 24 to 105 millimeters, with the ISO 100, 35 millimeters, f8, 1/200 of a second. So camera settings spot on here, nice and low ISO, f8 giving you the sharpness all the way through, 1/200 second giving you nice bright colors, lots of lovely saturation and everything together. So I really like that, Zdeněk. I will not add anything to it. It's beautiful, lovely edited and well put together. So congratulations. That's one of my favorite landscape pictures this week. Now that will bring us to final photographer of the week, and that's John. John, we have some lovely pet photography here. So let's have a look at it. First one right here with the beautiful dog with lots of lovely bokeh at the back and very cute animal as well. So let's start by looking at the camera and camera settings. This was Canon or Nikon D850 with the lens 85 millimeters f1.4. From the camera settings, ISO 200, 85 millimeters f2, and 1/250th of a second. Now, John, looking at it, there's a lots of things right here. I really like the bokeh at the back. The light is very nice. There's pretty much no noise with that. I love the depth with the beautiful focus on the foreground. However, looking at the image, it is a little bit soft. I'm trying to find where is the main focus, and it almost feels like maybe it's by the paw, maybe like at this point right here. And then, I mean, the nose is a little bit out of focus, but the eyes and the forehead isn't really super sharp, which I think is a little bit of a shame. Now, it's not as visible when you look at it from far, but when you make it a little bit bigger, you can see it. Let me try to see if you guys will see it too. So even though it's beautiful capture with lots of technically well done stuff, the sharpness isn't great. So maybe adjusting your focus point or something like that would help in the future, or maybe focusing on the eye, or maybe having a little faster shutter speed there. I'm not sure which one of these it was, but there is a tiny bit of softness there. But other than that, I think technically it's all good there. Now, talking about composition, I love this image. Again, there is lots of really nice stuff here. Clear focal point with lovely brightness on the foreground. When we look at the head and the overall image, right away you can say what you're trying to show, who is the main subject and the focal point. So again, lots of really good stuff and well done job there. I love the framing. I think again, the dog being the center point of the image, it works really well. The fact that the dog is black and white really helps, adding a really nice contrast to the warm autumn feel. And again, the light is really nice. So lots of it really well done here. Lovely edit, lovely level of saturation and lovely contrast, and just really, really well done. So John, lovely picture, just a little bit more sharpness and it would all work very well. Now, talking about this image, obviously it's a different feel, a different look to it. This was captured with Nikon D3 70 to 200 millimeters. From the camera settings, ISO 400, 320 millimeters, f5.6, and 1,250th of a second. Now, ISO 400 on that fast shutter speed, probably the dog moving a lot is perfectly fine. So 400 on ISO, no problem. 320th millimeters, which made me wonder if you have used like an extension tube, because the lens was 70 to 200 millimeters. If you did, it worked. So well done there. f5.6, giving you this really soft cinematic background. Again, very well. And 1,250th of a second actually give you great sharpness, specifically around the eyes. So that's a big difference between the first image and the second image. The second image really has a lovely sharpness around the eye and around that area there. So I like that there. The light is really nice coming from the top and from foreground, work really, really well. And the noise, not really visible there. So again, nicely done. And I think technically really nicely captured image. When it comes to the artistic part and talking about the composition, it's lovely. I really enjoy this close framing, focusing on the head. Everything is there with extra active space in front of the head to make it look really natural. It's a lovely image that could be part of series of the dog. I enjoyed that monochrome edit, helping really the animal to stand out. Maybe the image didn't have a great colors, or maybe the contrast wasn't great, and that's where the monochrome can really help and really bring the main subject out. So John, well done, amazing picture, well captured and well edited too. The first gram, also great picture, lovely bokeh, lovely composition, just a touch on the sharpness there. So folks, there you have it. Thank you to all of you for submitting your images. It was great to be able to review them for you. If you have more, or if you want to join us for next week, make sure that you follow the link, which is available in the members zone of the Clever Photographer Plus membership. Also, the links are in our Clever Photographer Academy. And if you're not part of our membership yet, if you're not part of our Clever Photographer Academy, join us by heading to cleverphotographer.com/forward membership. So it was great to see all of your pictures. Thank you for joining us live. Thank you for joining us on the replay. I hope you all going to have a great week. I hope you're going to take at least one day to get out with your camera and capture something amazing. And until then, until next week, again on Tuesday, 6 p.m. UK time, have a lovely week, have a lovely weekend, and I'm looking forward to see you soon. Take care, stay safe, and good evening.